ordinary morning when Chris' life took an unexpected turn. He had parked his car and stepped out onto the quiet street, ready to go about his day. As he walked towards the sidewalk, something caught his eye, a small, unmoving shape lying near the roadside. At first, he thought it was just a pile of leaves or debris blown by the wind. But as he moved closer, he realized it was a tiny ball of fur curled up and trembling faintly. His heart sank. It was a baby squirrel, so small and fragile it could fit in the palm of his hand. Chris looked around, hoping to find the mother nearby. He scanned the trees, bushes, and surrounding areas, but there was no sign of her. The little squirrel was completely alone, and it was clear that if Chris didn't intervene, the tiny creature wouldn't survive. Chris hesitated, unsure of what to do. He wasn't a veterinarian or a wildlife expert, just an ordinary man on his way to work. But as he stood there, staring at the helpless little squirrel, he realized he couldn't walk away. With gentle hands, Chris picked up the tiny creature, prattling it in a soft cloth he found in his car. He whispered softly, "Don't worry, little guy, I'll take care of you," and headed back home, determined to help. At home, Chris quickly realized how challenging the situation was. The squirrel was cold, weak, and barely moving. Chris wrapped him in a soft towel and placed him near a heating pad to keep him warm. He turned to the internet, researching how to care for an orphaned squirrel. He learned that the baby needed hydration, warmth, and a special formula to survive. That same day, Chris went out to buy supplies, a syringe, ingredients for the formula, and a small heating pad. It was a steep learning curve, but he was determined to do whatever it took. Chris stayed up late that night, carefully feeding the squirrel tiny drops of the formula and keeping him close to his chest for comfort and warmth. The first few days were critical. There were moments when Chris feared the worst, but he refused to give up. "You're a fighter," he'd say softly, encouraging the little squirrel to keep going. After a week of tireless care, something miraculous happened. The tiny squirrel began to show signs of improvement. He started moving more, his fur looked healthier, and one morning, for the first time, he opened his eyes. Chris felt an overwhelming sense of relief and joy. This tiny creature who had been so close to death was now alive and growing stronger. With his eyes now open, the squirrel seemed more curious about his surroundings. Chris decided it was time to give him a name. After some thought, he settled on Acorn. It felt like the perfect name for a creature who had already shown so much resilience and potential. Acorn quickly became part of the family. He would scamper around the living room, climb onto Chris's shoulder, and even playfully steal food from the dinner table. Chris' kids adored him, and his presence brought a sense of joy and wonder into their home. However, Chris couldn't shake the thought that this wasn't where Acorn truly belonged. From the start, his intention had been to nurse the little squirrel back to health and release him into the wild, not to keep him as a pet. But as the days turned into weeks, Chris found himself growing more and more attached to Acorn. He wrestled with the decision, torn between his love for the squirrel and his responsibility to do what was best for him. After much reflection, Chris made up his mind. He began taking Acorn outside every day, gradually introducing him to the sights, sounds, and smells of the natural world. At first, Acorn was hesitant, clinging to Chris's shirt and refusing to leave his side. But over time, he began to explore, climbing trees, chasing leaves, and discovering the joy of being free. One day, Chris watched as Acorn climbed into the branches of a tree and stayed there, building a nest of his own. It was a bittersweet moment. Acorn had found his place in the world, but it also meant he wouldn't be coming back inside anymore. Still, Chris felt a deep sense of pride knowing that the little squirrel he had saved was now independent and thriving. Acorn wasn't gone completely, though. He often visited Chris and his family, chirping happily at the back door as if to say hello. Those visits were a reminder of the unbreakable bond they had formed, a bond built on love, trust, and compassion. Chris's decision to help a tiny, helpless creature had not only saved Acorn's life, but also enriched his own. It was a powerful reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can have a profound impact. This story is not just about Chris and Acorn. It's about all of us and the choices we make every day. The world is full of opportunities to show compassion to animals, to people, and to the planet. Every small act of kindness adds up, creating a ripple effect that makes the world a better place. Let this story inspire you to take action. Whether it's rescuing an animal in need, planting a tree, or simply spreading kindness in your community, your efforts can make a difference. And if this story touched your heart, share it with your friends and family to spread the message. Together, we can celebrate and encourage the beauty of humanity. Thank you for being part of this journey and for choosing to be a force of good in the world.